Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Arrowverse and Superman and Lois. And Superman and Lois, yes, it's not part of the Arrowverse, but due to the fact it was on the CW, it counts to me. So yeah, we're going to be going all the way back to the beginning, from Smallville days all the way to Superman and Lois, because Superman and Lois is the latest show. So I may miss out the odd show here and there because I'm not completely up to date with Arrowverse stuff in general. I haven't watched absolutely everything. I have watched a majority of like the mainstream shows, but there are a few shows that I genuinely haven't watched, so I will just say I haven't watched them to know. But yeah, if you do enjoy the video, please like, subscribe and comment if you're new, and I would really appreciate it. Let me know what your favourite finale was out of the Arrowverse in the comments. So, Smallville, let's start there. For Smallville, I never watched it as a kid due to the fact that I am now 20, so I wasn't even born when the first really 4 seasons were out of Smallville. I didn't even exist. So, and when I did exist on the final 6 seasons or so, I was way too young to even understand what was going on. I didn't even know Smallville existed. I'd never heard of it or anything. So yeah, I actually watched Smallville when I was 15, and I completed the entire 10 seasons in like 3 weeks. I loved it that much. But by this point, this was like 2020, so it'd already been finished for 9 years. So yeah, it was either 2020 or 2019, but I know that I was 15 when I watched it, so I think it was 2019 actually when I think about it. But I already knew the show had ended, and yeah, I was disappointed when I finished the entire show. I found it was not good all the way throughout, and to be honest with you, the finale was okay, nothing super special. I'm not going to go into depth with it, but my personal thought is like the finale was alright. But there wasn't too much else to say about it. So that's Smallville. Just so you guys know, there is spoilers about Superman and Lois, as you can probably see by the picture. So if you haven't watched the last episode, I'd recommend going and watching it. And if you haven't watched the season, I'd recommend going and watching the entire show and the season. But anyway, next show, Arrow. So I didn't watch Arrow to begin with. It came out before The Flash, but I was watching The Flash before Arrow. It came out in 2012, not 2012. I mean, came out in 2012, and this was really only a year after Smallville finished. So I only watched Arrow once again when I hit the age of 15. This was way before I watched Smallville. I started watching Smallville like a week before Christmas or something. Arrow was on its 6th season, I believe, at this time. So I had... actually, no, I lie. I think I might have watched Arrow before that. I think I watched Arrow when I was 13. Because Arrow ended in 2019, so I think it was on it. I think I was 13 when I first watched Arrow, because I'd watched The Flash. So I watched The Flash when I was 10, and it finished last year. So yeah, that makes sense. So I only had a little bit left to go for Arrow anyway. I only had 2 seasons to get through. After I'd completely caught up to season 6 where we were at, and when I got to season 6, some of the episodes were out and then some of them weren't, so I actually got to like 3/4 of season 6 and then I had to wait weekly for the episodes. So as the finale goes for Arrow, which was actually, I'm not talking about Crisis, I'm talking about episode 7, because that wasn't actually the finale for Arrow, that was just Crisis on Infinite Earths. I thought it was okay. Once again, I didn't think it was the best finale. I felt like Arrow kind of went really off course with certain characters, and they brought in too many vigilantes and things. Like, it made sense, like maybe if he had like 1 or 2, but like he had 5 vigilantes, 6 vigilantes at the end of it, other than Oliver. So I was kind of on edge with it. But going back to where it all began, I did enjoy it. a little bit. Wasn't the best thing, but you know, it is what it is. I haven't watched it in a while, but yeah, I rewatched Arrow 2 years ago, but I haven't watched it since. So yeah, I did enjoy it though. Right, next one, The Flash. So The Flash, and I'm going in order of kind of like how the shows came out, by the way, because I know The Flash ended last year. Well, almost 2 years now, considering we're going into 2025, and it ended in 2023. In May 2025, it would have been 2 years. The Flash. So, to be honest with you, I was glad that they kept the show going, but the only reason I was glad that they kept the show going was because of its early seasons. I really enjoyed the show, and I grew up with it since I was 10 years old. It was the show that had the biggest impact in my life, and I was watching it every single week through each season. It really started to go downhill for me in season 6. I know some people are saying like for them it went down like a lot lower, but for me it was season 6, because season 6 was good, the first half, with the whole crisis and temptation of Barry Allen thing, and he was supposed to die. And then the second half was just awful with Mirror Monarch. I can't say it was a good episode, or good second half of the season. The episode of the finale was awful. Didn't enjoy it very much, of season 6 anyway. And yeah, I was just talking about season 6 there, like in general, like the finale was awful for that season. I know it was COVID as well, so they had to cut the season short and then continue the last arc through season 7 for the first 3 episodes, but I still didn't enjoy it very much. Season 7 only had the first 2 episodes were good, in my opinion. The rest of the season was bad. Season 8 only had first 5 episodes that were good, which was the Armageddon crossover. Then season 9 only had 2 good episodes, and that was episode 9 and 10. So, but for the actual finale, to be honest with you, I was sad about the show ending. Not because it was good anymore. I generally don't think the show was very good, and I got bored for most of season 9, as it was mostly filler. The only episodes that got me engaged was episode 9, where it's My Party, I'll Die If I Want To, and A New World Part 1, where the Reverse Flash returns and we get the full circle moment. But other than that, the finale I absolutely hated for most of it. I liked the last 5-10 minutes where he was like monologuing and then he had his final run and then the show ended. I felt that was quite good. But the actual episode, like bringing the villains back for 5 minutes and then just killing them off, was stupid. And considering it was Cecile who took out Godspeed, Keown took out Zoom, these villains just didn't feel menacing anymore. The only fight I was even invested in was XS versus Savitar. But yeah, overall, finale was bad. Didn't enjoy it very much. And I was kind of angry with the fact that I lost, my favourite show, the show that I've been watching for years, and now I just, it just ended in a bad way, and I was always annoyed about that. But anyway, next, Supergirl. So, with Supergirl, to be honest with you, I kind of stopped enjoying Supergirl after like season 4. I kind of felt like it was just, we can do it together. We have to have these pep talks every single episode, and it was getting so annoying. I just didn't enjoy it anymore. I did watch the entire show because I'd started watching it and I wanted to watch the entire thing, but I've not watched it since. I've not watched Supergirl since it ended back in 2020 or 2021 or whatever it was. I've not watched a single episode since it finished. Finale was okay, not much to say about it. It's been a while since I've watched it, so I don't remember too much of what actually happens, but I know that they have a huge team up and all the characters come back and everything. But once again, it was kind of just mid. And then Kara revealed her identity. I don't agree with the Superman and Superwoman doing that, because it's kind of pivotal to, like, you know, that they keep their identity secret. So I wasn't happy with that. But overall, the finale was just mid. Didn't say it was amazing, but I wouldn't say it's awful either. DC Legends. I actually enjoyed Legends a lot. And why I enjoyed this, I don't know. I think it's because it was so, the show was like, you didn't know what to expect. It was so random. They threw these side characters together and kind of made a good show out of it. And I actually thought Legends was a good show. I didn't think there was a problem with it. I didn't think the show was bad. At times it was a bit cringe, and sometimes it didn't always make sense. And to be honest with you, they did get rid of some of the good characters that were actually in the show, like Captain Cold and Heatwave. But he kind of went off at times, Heatwave. Like, he never actually left the show, but I kind of felt like he wasn't there sometimes for certain missions, and he was one of my favourite characters in Legends. Even though he hasn't got any powers and he just has a gun that shoots fire, I kind of thought, it was still a good, show. And I didn't mean like they got rid of him as in like he was gone forever. I just mean they got rid of him for some of the show. But yeah, the finale, as it was concerned, I thought was good. I liked the finale for DC Legends. I haven't watched the show since it finished, and to be honest with you, I thought it was getting another season because the way that they portrayed it. Oh right, it's getting another season. By the way, it was ended on a cliffhanger, and then it got cancelled, so it never did. So I was actually quite annoyed at that. I hate shows that have this thing of, oh yeah, we're going to get another season, when to be fair, it probably wasn't their fault, because they probably thought they were going to get renewed for another season. They didn't. Maybe I think the next one, even if they did have one, would have been the final season, but I would rather they wrap the show up rather than just leaving it on a cliffhanger. So I wasn't happy about that. But overall, the finale was, once again, it was kind of mid. Wasn't the greatest finale in the world, but yeah. Right. Before we get into Superman and Lois as well, I will be like saying shows that I haven't watched to determine their finales. But next on the list is Titans, and yes, it is linked to the Arrowverse due to the fact that it was featured in Crisis, so it was like part of the Arrowverse. Titans. I'm going to give them some slack. And the reason I'm going to give them some slack is because for the first half of the season, they thought they were getting renewed for a fifth season, or they'd already been renewed for a fifth season. It was only at the halfway point of Titans, where there was a long break, they actually had to refilm the second half of the season because they got cancelled, which is why it took longer. Because I think they'd already filmed the entire season, because usually they do. They have to film the entire season, then they add these special effects and things like that for the fight scenes and stunt stuff. But then they were cancelled, so they had to do some rewriting to the script, so that because it was being rewritten, they had to reenact it so that they knew it was the final half of the season. And so, to be fair to them, yes, it was rushed, but they didn't exactly have the time to sort it out, and I was annoyed that the show was ending, because once again, most of these shows have been abruptly ended just because of James Gunn's DCU, and I'm very angry about that still, but I'll go into that a little bit later on. Next on the list for that is the finale of Titans anyway. The next list on it is on this list, I mean. But as the finale goes, I actually thought it wasn't bad at all. I like endings that are wholesome, and I felt like with Titans it was wholesome. The ending that they gave us, where they all got together, had a nice dinner together, and Dick and Corey were exploring a relationship, and they were going to have a relationship together. They all went off and did their separate thing, and they all agreed that they were going to come back if they needed each other. But overall, they were going their separate ways, and I thought that was a nice open ending to the show, and I do really like open endings to shows of superhero nature. So I would say it was a good finale, but it wasn't amazing, but it was good. Shows that I haven't really watched, or I hated when I first watched it, was Batwoman. Watched the first 2 episodes, got fed up. And Swamp Thing, never watched. Constantine, I've never watched. Gotham, I've only just started watching. Gotham's like Smallville, I assume. I've not watched Black Lightning either. I've not watched Stargirl, and I've not watched Doom Patrol. There is one more show that I forgot to mention just now, Lucifer. I watched Lucifer the first 2 seasons when I was about 15 years old, and I really enjoyed it. It ended like 2 years ago, I think, 2-3 years ago. So I actually was on season 3 or 4 when the show was continuing, and I'd watched everything up to date at that point. But finale wise, it was great. I actually enjoyed the finale of Lucifer. I like the ending where Chloe dies and then joins him in hell, and they kind of live together forever, happily ever after kind of thing. I really enjoyed that, and it was a nice wholesome ending to the show, also an open ending as well. So I thought that was a great finale. Even that's probably the only one that I said that was a great finale so far. Right, the finale that I've been wanting to talk about, Superman and Lois. To be honest with you, this is one of the best shows that I've ever watched. No joke. I still feel like I prefer The Flash just because of nostalgia, and I watched it growing up. But Superman and Lois has just been great throughout. And to be honest with you, it deserved so many more seasons than it actually got. But luckily for them, one thing that they did have is they did have time to plan the final season, because from what I know, they had a contract of 6 to 7 seasons, but then it got cancelled due to James Gunn again, which I'm still annoyed about, and this is quality television, I can't lie. But I've never had a dull moment watching Superman and Lois. I've always loved the show so much. But to be honest with you, this finale actually shocked me. No joke, it absolutely shocked me, this finale. I didn't want him to retire. And what I mean by this is I didn't want him to retire. I wanted him to continue being Superman, or him get his heart back, like in episode 9 or something. And for him to be Superman, and then the boys will take, they work with him, not take over, but work with him. And I thought that would have been a really nice ending. But boy, when I actually watched it, I was stalling to watch it because I didn't want to watch the finale. Not because I wasn't excited, I really wanted to see it, but because one of my favourite shows is ending, I didn't want to watch it. But I was so pleasantly surprised by how well done they did it. No joke, they did such a good job. The one thing I will say is I felt like the boys didn't get enough time as superheroes, and they only just got their suits, like in this image you see here. They got their suits for 1 minute, and then you never get to see them again now. But the ending was a closed ending. That's the end. There will never be another episode of Superman and Lois. Nothing can ever pick it up. There will never be a multiverse concept about this show ever again, unless it's to do with Jordan and Jonathan, but even then it's unlikely. It was actually shocking I did not think that. This is spoilers now, so if you don't want to listen, I suggest clicking off the video. I didn't think Clark was going to die, and I didn't think Lois was going to die either. I thought at least if they were going to do the retirement route, that they were just going to go and live out old years together, and then that was what we were going to see. But it was really shocking to me, actually. Lois's cancer returned. Clark, he grew old, and he had a monologue at the end saying, I lived another 32 years after Sam gave me his heart. And considering Sam was 60, that pretty much means that Sam would have lived to 90 years old, or 92 years old, and that was really surprising. Because he had whatever Sam had left. So Superman did live to about, I'd say if he was in his 40s, to his 70s. But they both grew old together. Lois's cancer returned. So she died. But you also get to see an older Jordan and Jonathan. And it was lovely. I actually love this ending. I was quite surprised, actually. And, like, the way that Clark was explaining as well throughout this whole period, like, after he died, he woke up in his, in his young spirit self, and kind of went round the house with his younger version of his sons, seeing John Henry and Lana together, Lex Luthor crying, he was forgiving Lex. And honestly, it was breathtaking. The way it was ending. I'd never seen a better ending to a show, really. And at the very end, he was in the afterlife with Lois, or he walked through the door of his house after he said goodbye to all of his past memories and stuff, and he just went into the afterlife, kissed Lois, and then you get a gold Superman and Lois logo, and that's the end of the show. This is the best finale I have ever seen in general. Like, I've watched Big Bang Theory, I've watched like all the the Arrowverse stuff, I've watched like what was the other show I watched? I watched Friday Night Dinner. I know that's stupid, but I watched Friday Night Dinner. All of this stuff exists, and I've never seen a finale more well written than Superman and Lois. And yes, it is a closed ending. We will never see this character again played by Tyler Hoechlin, or maybe we would in a multiverse concept where he's playing like the other version of Superman he did in Supergirl, but we will never see him play this specific version again. And to be honest with you, I wasn't a fan of him at first. In the Arrowverse, I kind of felt like he was a bit cocky, and I wasn't a big fan. And when I heard he was having his own show, I wasn't all for it to begin with, and then I actually watched it, and his Superman is so much better in this version. You guys might disagree with me, but I generally prefer his Superman and Lois version to his Arrowverse counterpart. But he had been playing Superman for about 8 years, even though on screen in Arrowverse he wasn't there very much, other than like his biggest appearance really was Elseworlds and Crisis. But I genuinely love this show to pieces, and to be perfectly honest with you, it breaks my heart that the show ended so early. Like, for me, 4 seasons isn't very long. It might sound stupid, but 4 seasons for me isn't very long, because I'm so used to watching shows like that have 8 seasons, 10 seasons, and then The Flash for 9, Supergirl for 6, Legends for 6. Like, all of these shows have ended, after a long period of seasons. So really, I would say the show's only starting to get long after 5 seasons. So for Superman and Lois, it felt like it should have been a lot longer than it was, and it deserved it. It really deserved it. And I'm heartbroken that the show is over. And to be honest with you, that there's no ever possible way of this version of Superman to ever come back either. This is it. Like, that's what the worst part is for me, is there's no open ending. It's a closed ending. And as much as I think that was the best route to go and it couldn't have gone any better way, it still broke me inside. Like, this was such a great show, and then they cancelled it. It just, honestly, it broke me when I watched this finale. I can't cry. I'm not going to lie to you. I can't cry at TV shows or movies. I can't cry in general, really. I haven't cried in years. But I applaud the actors for doing such a great job with this show. Honestly, I've never met such a great cast or seen a great cast in a show. And yes, The Flash was a great cast as well. Smallville was as well, but Superman and Lois just hits a different nerve for me. And it goes for a different route than most of these shows do. Titans is more of a brutal show. Arrow's a brutal show. Flash is more of a hope sort of show. But this show genuinely goes more of a family route, and it's so good for it. And to be totally honest with you, I'm just broken. Like, no joke, I'm going to be sad for weeks. And yes, we probably will get TV shows from James Gunn's new DCU, but even then, that's not going to be for a very long time. Because right now he's focusing on movies, and the movies that I think he's focusing on is a Superman movie which is coming out in July, and Batman the Brave and the Bold, which is going to be featuring Damian Wayne and Bruce. I'm more of a TV show guy, so I prefer TV shows. But due to the show ending, I've never been so sad. Honestly, I haven't. It didn't get enough time to shine, and to be honest with you, this show could have been so much longer. And I think that it kind of went from one thing I will criticise is season 3. It went from one jump to it being Bruno Mannheim and then Lex Luthor at the end, to it kind of going from one of the smaller villains to a giant villain. But that's because the show was ending. I guarantee if the show was not ending, we wouldn't have had any sort of we wouldn't have had Lex Luthor or Doomsday as the villain. I think we would have had someone else that wasn't as well known, and then we would have had this season as the final season. So, like, let's say the show went for 8 seasons, for example. We would have had 7 seasons of other villains kind of like building it up, and then we would have gotten to season 8. Final 10 episodes would have been this, and it would have worked perfectly. Not saying it hasn't, but the one thing I will give it props for is they did write the final season amazingly, and I do feel like they could have done a lot more with the show in general, and they could have like gotten the boys to use their powers more, made more saves, and not saying that they should have done with the time frame, but I'm talking like if the show went on more. The one thing I was a bit disappointed about was the fight between him and Lex at the beginning of the episode, kind of finishing off what we left off from last episode. It kind of had me hyped that it was going to be a really long kind of fight, but then when I actually see it, they balanced it out quite well with the timings and the back half of the episode. Overall, perfect finale. Perfect. Thank you, Arrowverse, for everything that you have done for me. I love all of these shows to bits, and they've done so much for me. So thank you, everyone. This is my dedication to the Arrowverse. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and comment if you're new. I'd really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.